Welcome to the Explainer. Now, if you're working on mastering English, I bet you know exactly what I'm talking about here. You've got the vocabulary down, you know the grammar rules inside and out, but when it actually comes time to speak, you just freeze. It's incredibly frustrating, right? But honestly, it's such a common hurdle. So today, we're unpacking a step-by-step methodology pulled straight from our sources to help you literally break that translation habit once and for all. Okay, let's dive into this. Our roadmap for the explainer today is broken down into 5 parts. First, the translation trap. Then, start with simple thoughts. After that, build real conversations. Next, immerse your brain. And finally, the daily challenge. All right, starting off with section 1, the translation trap, and why we actually freeze up in the first place. Have you ever found yourself in this exact situation? Just picture it. Someone walks right up to you, smiles, and asks a super simple question, something like, "How are you today?" And boom, your brain just completely shuts down. It is agonizing. You know what they said, you totally know what the words mean, but before you can actually get your mouth to work, the conversation has already completely moved on without you. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what's happening during that awful, agonizing pause. It's a 4-step mechanical breakdown. First, you hear the English words. Step 2, your brain scrambles to translate them into your native language. Step 3, you come up with your answer in your native language. And then finally, step 4, you're translating that answer back into English. I mean, no wonder it takes too long. By the time your brain chugs through all 4 of those steps, your conversational window, it's completely gone. But listen, I really want to reassure you right now. Relying on translation is absolutely not a failure. It's really not. As this fantastic quote from our source material puts it, translation is your brain's training wheels. Think about it. When you're first learning English, translating is 100% normal. It's a totally necessary, temporary developmental stage. Your brain is basically just trying to anchor this huge new language to the language it already knows. So those training wheels, crucial at the start. But if you want to ride smoothly into actual fluency, you're going to have to take them off eventually. Which brings us to section 2. Start with simple thoughts. We really need to lower the barrier to entry here. See, the secret to stopping this translation habit isn't to suddenly start having complex debates in English. No, it's way simpler. It's about starting with easy, really short thoughts right during your morning routine. Just think to yourself, I am awake. I'm tired. It's a beautiful morning. I'm hungry. I need coffee. By deliberately firing off these incredibly basic sentences right when you wake up, you are actively training your brain. And honestly, over a surprisingly short amount of time, they become completely automatic, meaning no translation needed whatsoever. Once you've got your morning routine dialed in, try moving on to this brilliant little exercise. Just look around the room you're sitting in right now. The goal is super simple. Spot an object and name it in English. Chair, phone. Then you just expand that into a really basic sentence. The chair is brown, or my phone is on the table. What you're doing here is directly wiring the English language to the physical reality around you. And notice what's missing? Absolutely zero native language involved. You're cutting out the middleman completely. And you can actually push this even further by becoming your own personal narrator as you go about your day. Imagine you're literally just telling the story of your life as it happens. I'm brushing my teeth. I'm making breakfast. I'm walking to work. Because these are simple things you do every single day, you're essentially handing yourself hundreds of free, low-pressure chances to practice thinking in English. Let's move to section 3, build real conversations, and see how this builds into simulating a real dialogue. It's just a simple fact that good conversations begin with good questions, right? So to simulate a real dialogue without that horrible pressure of actually talking to another human being right away, start by asking yourself super easy questions in English, like, where are my keys? By prompting yourself with a basic question like that, you force your brain to shift out of passive observation mode and directly into an active conversational gear. And then, immediately, you just answer your own internal question. My keys are on the table. Now, okay, I'll admit this might feel just a little bit silly at first, but it is incredibly powerful.
You're effectively creating this back and forth conversation inside your mind, entirely in English. You get to play the role of both the asker and the answerer.
Now, what's really interesting here is a common trap a lot of learners fall into: memorizing isolated words, words like hungry or late. But the actual building blocks of real conversations are functional phrases. Things like I'm hungry or I'm running late. When you learn these complete phrases instead of single disconnected words, you're grabbing the actual tools of conversation. It's infinitely faster for your brain to reach for a prepackaged phrase than it is to awkwardly try and build a sentence from scratch using a mental dictionary and a bunch of grammar rules.
And hey, speaking of grammar rules, you've really got to abandon your perfectionism here. Seriously, remember this: fluency comes before perfection, and simple English, it's good English. Way too many learners just stay silent because they're terrified of making a mistake. They want every single sentence to be completely flawless. But think about how kids learn to speak. Children mess up every single day, right? But they just keep talking. And that continuous, messy output is exactly how they improve. You need to do exactly the same thing. Which leads us nicely into section 4. Immerse your brain. This is all about focusing on your daily input and output. For English to actually start feeling natural, your brain literally has to interact with it every single day. First up, you need to read out loud. When you do this, your eyes, your ears, your mouth, and your brain are all forced to work together in perfect harmony. It's a full system workout. Second, commit to listening to English for just 10 to 15 minutes a day. And look, you don't need to be hunched over a desk for this. You can do it passively while you're cooking or walking the dog or cleaning up. Combining that daily passive listening with active reading aloud pretty much guarantees your brain gets the immersive input it really craves.
But, okay, what happens when you're doing all this immersing and you hear a word you just don't know? Let's look at a quick mini narrative to explain. Imagine you hear someone say, "The little boy was exhausted after the game." Now, if you don't know what exhausted means, please do not immediately run to your translation app. Don't do it. Instead, look at the context clues. He sat down, he was breathing hard, he wanted to sleep. By just following the story, you'll naturally figure out that exhausted just means really, really tired. You've completely bypassed the dictionary and learned the word in context, which again is exactly how a child does it.
All right, let's wrap things up with section 5, the daily challenge. It's time to see how this practice compounds. So, the absolutely crucial point here is that learning to think in English isn't some magic switch you can just flip overnight. It's a muscle. And like any muscle, it grows little by little. 5 minutes today, 10 minutes tomorrow, maybe 15 minutes next week. You really don't need to be practicing for 3 hours a day. Small, consistent daily practice creates massive compounding results over time. Every single time you choose to think in English instead of translating, your brain gets just a tiny bit faster. Which brings us to my final challenge for you. Tomorrow morning, when you wake up, what is your very first English thought going to be? Try spending just 5 minutes thinking entirely in English. Narrate what you see, narrate what you hear. Do this enough, and over time, I promise you, those training wheels are going to come off completely effortlessly. I mean, if just 5 simple minutes a day can completely rewire how your brain processes language, imagine what could happen if you applied this to every single conversation you have. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Now go start thinking.